Yesterday. We didn't want you there." The words cracked through the phone like a thunderclap. My daughter's voice, Emily's voice, sharp, steady, without a tremor of hesitation. I remember the phone slipping from my hand. It clattered against the linoleum floor of my small kitchen. The screen glowed up at me like a cruel spotlight. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. How could she say that? How could she mean that? I sank into the chair by the window, the same window I'd leaned against countless nights when Emily was little, watching her sleep through the thin curtains of our rented apartment. Back then, I thought all the sacrifices, the double shifts, the worn-out shoes, the endless bills, would one day bloom into something beautiful. But now, sitting alone with my heart pounding, I felt as though my whole life had been pulled out from under me. Before we dive into today's emotional journey, don't forget to subscribe to Silent Tear Stories and hit the notification bell. Here you'll always find stories of sacrifice, betrayal, and those unforgettable tables turned. Where are you watching from today? Leave a comment below, because maybe the next story we tell will remind you of your very own experience. Emily was my only child, my miracle. From the day her father died, she was 5, clutching his shirt at the funeral. It was me and her against the world. I scrubbed diner counters, folded laundry until my fingers cracked, cleaned offices when the town slept. Every dollar stretched thin, every meal skipped, was for Emily, and she knew it. She used to leave me crayon notes in my apron. "Mom, you are my hero." Those words carried me through nights when exhaustion pressed like stone. She grew bright, ambitious, the first in our family to graduate college. I thought pride would burst my chest as I clapped from the bleachers, but somewhere after that milestone, she began to drift. Calls unanswered, visits shorter, new clothes, new jewelry, little explanations. Then came Daniel, a polished smile, expensive suits, eyes that slid past me as if I were invisible. His family lived in a world where appearances mattered more than love, and slowly my Emily began to mirror him. One afternoon, while tossing the trash, I noticed a gold-edged envelope jutting out of the dumpster. The shimmer caught my eye. I pulled it free, smoothed the creases, then froze. It was a wedding invitation, my daughter's wedding invitation. Names filled the page in elegant script. Daniel's relatives, business partners, people I had never met. The paper smelled faintly of roses, but nowhere was my name. I snapped a photo, my hands trembling, the edges cutting my palm, proof that I hadn't imagined it, proof that I had been erased. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the invitation until the letters blurred. My chest ached with questions. Was this a mistake? An oversight? Or had the truth been hiding in plain sight all along, that my daughter no longer wanted me in her world? And here's where I ask you, dear listener, if you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have marched to her door, demanded answers? Or would you, like me, sit frozen, wondering how years of sacrifice could vanish with a single piece of paper? Because sometimes betrayal doesn't arrive with thunder. Sometimes it slips in quietly, printed in gold ink, smelling of roses, waiting to be found in the trash. Yesterday, we didn't want you there. That sentence didn't just echo, it nested in my skull, sharp as broken glass. The next morning, when I dragged myself into the diner, I wore my apron like armor. But no armor could hide the purple shadows under my eyes. The bell above the door jingled, plates clattered, coffee hissed, and yet all I heard was Emily's voice, slicing through every sound. Linda, my co-worker and oldest friend, caught me fumbling the carafe. Her brow furrowed. "You look pale, Margaret." What happened? I opened my mouth, but nothing came. How do you tell someone your child has exiled you from her life? I forced a smile instead. Linda leaned closer, whispering, "I saw photos online. Wasn't that Emily? In a wedding dress?" The mug slipped in my hand, coffee sloshing over the counter. My throat closed up. I muttered something about being tired, but Linda's eyes softened with pity. She didn't press. She didn't need to. The silence between us was answer enough. That day, every clink of glass felt like mockery. Every cheer from a booth stabbed like a reminder. The world had celebrated, and I'd been barred from the room. The humiliation didn't stop at the diner. At the laundromat, a woman folding towels beamed at me. "Congratulations, your daughter looks stunning in her wedding photos. You must be so proud." I smiled, but it was mechanical, my jaw aching from the effort. Inside, my chest caved. At the grocery store, a neighbor tapped my shoulder in the cereal aisle. "Margaret, I saw Emily's cake on Facebook. Gorgeous." What flavor was it? My hand froze on the box. "It was nice," I whispered, but the hollowness in me could have swallowed the whole aisle. It wasn't just exclusion, it was exposure. Everyone else knew, everyone had seen, and I was the only fool left blind. Weeks later, Emily came by. She didn't hug me. She didn't even step all the way inside. She hovered at the doorway like a guest, not a daughter. Her nails were polished, her blouse silk, her perfume sharp and unfamiliar. She looked expensive. "Mom," she began, voice rehearsed, "I hope you understand why we did what we did." Daniel's family wanted something private. "Exclusive? Exclusive?" My voice cracked. "From your own mother?" She sighed, shifting her purse strap. "It's complicated." That phrase again. A wall she could hide behind. Then she dropped the blade. "Daniel's parents thought it might be embarrassing. Having you there. Embarrassing." The word seared into me like fire on skin. "Embarrassing," I echoed, trembling. "After all the years I scrubbed floors, worked double shifts, skipped meals? I'm the embarrassment?" For half a second, guilt flickered in her eyes. Then it vanished, replaced by the cold polish Daniel had gifted her. "Mom, you wouldn't understand." Their world is different. Appearances matter. Appearances. Money. Prestige. All the things I could never give her. "Emily," my voice dropped to a whisper. "I was there for every scraped knee, every school play, every night you cried after your father died, and now I'm erased. For appearances?" She looked away. "I have to go. Daniel's waiting," and the door clicked shut behind her. That night, I lay on the couch staring at the cracked ceiling. Questions screamed through me. Where did I go wrong? How did I raise a daughter who saw shame instead of sacrifice? But deep down, I knew this wasn't all her. Someone else had laid the script in her mouth. Daniel. And behind him, his mother. My suspicions hardened at a neighborhood gathering. Glasses clinked, laughter swirled, and then I caught it. Two voices behind me, hushed but cruel. "Mrs. Collins insisted Margaret not be invited," one cousin sneered. "Said she'd ruin the family's image." Can you imagine? A diner waitress at a Collins wedding? The laughter that followed was jagged. I bit my lip until I tasted iron. My fists clenched so tight my nails dug crescents into my palms. I wanted to vanish. Instead, I stood frozen, blood roaring in my ears. In that moment, something shifted. This wasn't just Emily's betrayal. This was war. Of class, of pride, of control, and I was collateral damage. The slights kept coming. One afternoon, I found a half-crumpled card slipped under my door. A thank you note from Emily and Daniel, printed in gold script. "To our family and friends, thank you for sharing our special day." Family. Friends. Everyone but me. The paper blurred in my vision before I ripped it down the middle, the sound tearing through my silence. And still, I hoped. One evening, I dialed Emily's number, my voice soft. "Sweetheart, maybe we could have dinner." just the two of us, like old times. The pause on the other end said more than words. Then her voice. Mom? Daniel doesn't think that's a good idea. We're busy. We've moved on. We've moved on. I sat there clutching the phone, breath shallow. It felt like being buried alive, soil pressing in, lungs still screaming for air. Dear listener, have you ever been made to feel small by your own child, pushed aside for someone else's pride? If you have, then you know the ache, the kind that coils around your ribs and squeezes day after day. But here's what I learned. I may have been small in their eyes, but I was not powerless. Because while they tried to erase me from their story, I still held the truth of ours. And the truth, once spoken, has a way of turning tables no one expects. And that turn was coming. It was a Sunday afternoon when the final veil of denial lifted. I had just finished my shift at the diner, apron stiff with grease, when Linda knocked on my apartment door. She carried her phone in her hand, her expression a mix of sorrow and hesitation. Margaret, I think you should see this. On her screen was Facebook. A friend of a friend had posted a photo album titled A Perfect Day. And there she was, my daughter, my Emily, in a shimmering white gown, smiling so wide her cheeks dimpled. Her arm looped tightly through Daniel's, his smug grin as polished as his tuxedo. Around them, rows of guests clapped and cheered. Daniel's parents stood proudly in the front. But me? My seat was empty. Worse than empty, it had been replaced. A woman I'd never seen before sat in the place I should have been. A VIP guest, the caption called her. The ground beneath me seemed to tilt. My fingers dug into Linda's arm as I whispered, "She didn't just forget." She erased me. Linda's eyes brimmed with tears. "I'm so sorry, Margaret." That night, I sat at my small table, staring at the faint glow of my own laptop. I clicked through every picture I could find, the cake cutting, the vows, the first dance, each one a knife to the heart. And then, the caption beneath one photo froze me cold. A perfect day with everyone we love. Everyone. Except me. I thought of the notes Emily once wrote me. "Mom, you are my hero." I thought of the years I bent over scrub buckets, the nights I ate crackers so she could have dinner. And now, in her new world, I was nothing. But as I stared at that glowing screen, another feeling began to stir beneath the grief. Anger. The kind of anger that comes when someone steals not just your place at a table, but the very story of your life. The next morning, I opened an old wooden box from the back of my closet. Inside were the artifacts of my sacrifices, dusty but unforgotten, a stack of tuition receipts every semester I paid, often with borrowed money. The final notice from the power company marked paid after I skipped meals to save the bill. And most precious of all, a folded piece of paper, crayon still faint but legible. "Mom, you are my hero." I traced the words with my fingertip, my throat tightening. That note, written by a little girl with messy pigtails, was proof that once Emily had seen me for who I truly was. Before Daniel, before Mrs. Collins, before appearances became her religion. And I realized I still had these truths, proof that my life, my love, mattered. Min tror sist. But the true turning point came unexpectedly. A cousin from my late husband's side reached out, sending a private message. "Margaret, I was at the wedding." I couldn't believe it when they said you weren't invited. People whispered. It didn't sit right with anyone. She attached a candid photo. Emily twirling in her gown, joy radiating from her face. But in the background, I saw something else. Daniel leaning toward his mother, whispering. Mrs. Collins nodding with satisfaction. It hit me like lightning. This wasn't just Emily's choice, it was orchestrated, planned, a deliberate act to cut me out, to erase my existence so Emily could be rebranded as part of the Collins family, unburdened by the stain of a poor, widowed mother. And for the first time in weeks, my tears dried. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. I had been betrayed. Systematically. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror that night. Lines etched my face, proof of years of labor, of survival. I whispered aloud, "You are not worthless. You are not invisible, because if I didn't remind myself, no one else would." And as I stared at that reflection, a plan began to take shape. I started gathering, not just receipts and notes, but photos. Me at every school event, clapping in the bleachers, me holding Emily's science fair trophy, me working the night shifts, still showing up at her graduation in pressed clothes, no matter how tired I was. Each scrap of evidence was more than paper. It was my life's testimony. I knew I couldn't storm into Emily's new world with anger alone. Number. I needed to be calm, deliberate, undeniable, because when the moment came, and I knew it would not let them rewrite my story. And yet, even as I steeled myself, a part of me longed for Emily to reach out, to break free from Daniel's shadow. I waited. Days turned into weeks. Nothing came. Instead, I heard whispers, through neighbors, through mutual friends, that Emily was settling into her new life, that Daniel's family was so proud of the match, that they often toasted how seamlessly she had fit into their circle. Seamlessly. Because I had been cut away like a loose thread. Dear listener, maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've been the loose thread, the one someone trimmed to make themselves look tidy. If so, you know the sting. You know the fire it lights in your chest. I tell you this because I want you to see. I wasn't just a mother cast aside. I was a woman rediscovering her strength. And in that rediscovery, I found clarity. I didn't want revenge in the way of shouting or slamming doors. I wanted truth. Truth revealed in such a way that no one could deny it. Not Emily, not Daniel, not even the cold eyes of Mrs. Collins. And so I prepared, quietly, patiently. Like a woman sewing a quilt from scraps, I stitched together every piece of evidence, every fragment of love and sacrifice they had tried to erase. Because one day, I would lay that quilt bare for all to see, and when I did, the tables would turn. The invitation came indirectly. A week after the wedding, Linda came by my apartment with a look I couldn't read. She held her phone, screen glowing. "There's a family gathering at the Collins house next Sunday," she said carefully. "You should come. They might listen." Part of me wanted to slam the door on the idea. Why walk into a lion's den where I had already been humiliated? But another part, the stronger part, knew this was my chance, my moment to bring the truth into the light. So I prepared, not with fancy clothes or expensive gifts, but with the only weapons I had ever owned, the truth of my sacrifices. I tucked the receipts into a neat folder. I slipped the crayon note, "Mom, you are my hero," into my purse. My hands lingered on it, remembering the sticky crayon, the crooked heart. I carried a calmness that came not from wealth, but from years of endurance. The Collins estate shimmered that evening, a palace of light and glass. Chandeliers glowed like frozen stars, their brilliance reflecting in the polished marble. Servants in black carried trays of champagne. The air hummed with polite laughter. My plain navy dress felt almost threadbare against the satin gowns swirling around me, but I straightened my spine and walked inside. Conversations faltered, heads turned, eyes darted toward me, curious, mocking, pitying. And then, from across the room, I saw Emily. Her glass trembled in her hand, red wine rippling dangerously close to the rim. Daniel's arm tightened around her waist, his jaw set in irritation. "Mom," she whispered when I approached, her voice taut. "What are you doing here?" Before I could answer, Daniel stepped forward, voice slicing through the hall like a blade. "We didn't invite you. Didn't you get the message?" The room stiffened. Forks clinked against porcelain, then stilled. Whispers rippled like wind through grass. I steadied my breath. I came because I need to ask one question. In front of everyone, Daniel smirked, lips curling with disdain. "Go on, then." "Make a scene," I turned to Emily, my daughter, my once beloved child. My voice trembled, but it was clear. "Why did you erase me from the happiest day of your life?" Silence. All eyes fell on her. Emily's lips parted, but no sound came. Her gaze darted to Daniel, and then, with cruel precision, he answered for her. "Because we didn't want to be embarrassed." The words cracked through the hall like glass shattering. Gasps echoed. Somewhere, a fork clattered onto the floor. I felt the burn in my chest, but I did not falter. "Embarrassed," I repeated softly. My voice rose like a tide. "By me? The mother who worked 3 jobs so your tuition was paid in full? The mother who carried you on her back when you were sick? The mother who sacrificed everything so you could walk in this world with your head held high?" Daniel scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. "Oh, please. Everyone has a sob story. We're building a future here, Margaret. You don't fit laughter, nervous, scattered, fluttered at the edges of the room." But I wasn't finished. My fingers dug into my purse. Slowly, deliberately, I pulled out the folded crayon note. My hands shook, but my voice grew stronger. "This," I said, unfolding it for all to see, "was written by my daughter when she was 8 years old. Mom, you are my hero." I held it high, the childish handwriting trembling in the chandelier light. She once knew who I was. She once saw the truth. And now? Now I'm called an embarrassment? Emily's eyes brimmed with tears. Her hand flew to her mouth. I pressed on, fire building in my chest. And here, I tore open the folder, papers spilling across my hands, are the receipts from every semester of college. The loans I took, the nights I went hungry so she could eat. This is the price I paid. And you, Daniel, dare stand there and dismiss me? I tossed the folder onto the grand dining table. Papers burst into the air, scattering across linen and crystal like a storm of evidence. Gasps filled the room. Chairs scraped as guests leaned forward. One of Emily's old friends, standing near the back, shouted, her voice cracking, "How could you?" Mrs. Collins rose, her pearls catching the chandelier light. Her tone was brittle, commanding. "This is not the place." But I cut her off, my voice fierce, ringing across the marble. "No, this is exactly the place. You wanted to erase me, to scrub me out of the picture like dirt. But you cannot erase sacrifice. You cannot erase love. You cannot erase the truth." The air shifted. The smugness drained from Daniel's face. Emily trembled, tears spilling. And the crowd, the polished guests in gowns and suits, were no longer watching me. They were watching them, judgment heavy in their eyes. The tables had turned. I took a breath, heart thundering like a drum. I hadn't come for applause. I hadn't come for pity. I came to reclaim my dignity. So I straightened my shoulders, every muscle alive with resolve, and whispered, almost gently, "You tried to make me invisible. But I will not disappear. Not then. Not now. Not ever." I turned to leave, my steps steady across the marble floor. Behind me, silence pressed heavy, broken only by the faint clink of glass. But just as I reached the door, I heard it. Emily's voice, breaking, desperate. "Mom, wait, please." I paused. My hand lingered on the polished brass handle, but I didn't turn. Some silences are stronger than words. And with that, I walked out into the night air, the weight of betrayal still heavy, but my dignity intact. Dear listener, I wonder, if you were in my shoes, would you have stayed to hear her apology? Or would you, like me, have chosen silence? Sometimes silence speaks louder than any argument, because in that silence, the guilty are left to sit with their shame. And that, in the end, is its own kind of justice. The night air was cool as I stepped out of the Collins estate. The sky stretched wide above me, stars faint against the glow of the mansion lights. My heart was racing, yet strangely calm. Behind those glittering walls, the truth had been spoken, truth that could not be stuffed back into silence. I walked slowly down the gravel drive, each step lighter than the last. For years I had bent, bowed and shrunk myself to fit into roles others demanded of me. Widow, mother, provider, silent sacrifice. But tonight, for the first time in decades, I felt whole. In the weeks that followed, I didn't hear from Emily, not at first. The silence between us stretched like an ocean, vast and cold. I pictured her standing on the far shore, looking back, but unable to cross. I knew she was battling her own storm, torn between the comfort of her new life and the weight of what had been revealed. And while I grieved that distance, I also realized something. I could not keep waiting by the shore, hoping she'd return. My life couldn't be defined solely by her choices anymore. So I began to build. It started small. I rented a tiny storefront at the edge of town, a space no bigger than my kitchen. Its walls were bare, its floor scuffed, the front window streaked with years of dust. With Linda's help, I scrubbed every corner, painted the walls a soft cream, and hauled in secondhand tables and chairs. I named it Margaret's Corner. At first, it was just a place to sell homemade pies and coffee, but soon it became something more, a gathering spot. Neighbors lingered, swapping stories over chipped mugs. A young mother brought her toddler to play in the corner while she breathed in a rare moment of peace. Old men from down the street came to read the newspaper aloud, their voices echoing like a chorus. I set up a bulletin board where people pinned notes, birthday wishes, job offers, prayers for the sick. Slowly, the place filled with laughter and warmth. Lonely souls found comfort there. People who once looked at me with pity began to look at me with respect. And for the first time in years, I woke each morning with purpose. One evening, after closing up, I tacked a small piece of paper to the wall above my counter. A note faded with age, its edges curled. "Mom, you are my hero." I wanted everyone who entered to see it, not as a relic of pain, but as a reminder. That love, once real, never disappears completely. That sacrifice matters, even if the world tries to deny it. Sometimes I caught customers pausing by that note, their eyes softening, their shoulders easing. A grandmother once whispered, "My boy used to write me things like that too." In that moment, I realized it wasn't just my story. It was a mirror for others. Eventually, Emily did come. It was a Saturday afternoon. The bell over the door jingled, and there she was, my daughter, her. Eyes were swollen, her hands trembling as she clutched her purse. She looked so much like the little girl who once scribbled in crayon, yet older, haunted. "Mom," she whispered. Her voice cracked. I don't deserve to be here." I stared at her, a storm of emotions crashing inside me, anger, sorrow, longing. For a long moment, I said nothing. Then I nodded toward a chair. "Sit." She sat, and slowly words spilled out. "Daniel, he doesn't understand. He doesn't care about what you've done for me." "But I do, Mom. I always did. I was just afraid. Afraid of losing that world he offered me. Afraid of seeming small." Her tears fell freely, dotting the wooden table between us. "But when you spoke that night, I saw everything. I saw who I was becoming, and I hated it. I closed my eyes, the ache sharp but cleansing. "Emily," I said softly, "I don't need riches or appearances. I only ever needed your respect, And if you cannot give me that, then we have nothing." She reached across the table, her hand trembling. "I want to try again, please." Dear listener, I won't lie to you and say forgiveness came easily. It didn't. Wounds like mine don't vanish overnight. Some days the hurt still flares, like pressing on a bruise. But I learned something important. Forgiveness is not about excusing betrayal. It's about setting yourself free from the weight of it. So I chose, not for her sake, but for mine, to let go of the bitterness, to draw a boundary, but also to leave the door open, just enough for love to slip back in. And now, when I lock up my little shop at night, I look at that note on the wall. "Mom, you are my hero." And I smile. Not because Emily wrote it, but because I finally believe it myself. I am my own hero. And when I walk home under the street lamps, hearing the hum of cicadas and the faint chatter of neighbors, I feel lighter, because I know my story didn't end in that glittering mansion. It began again in a small corner shop, in laughter shared over coffee, in the quiet strength of standing tall after being pushed down. So here is the lesson, dear listener, etched deep in my heart. Respect isn't given by blood. It isn't guaranteed by the ties of family. Respect is earned through kindness, through loyalty, through gratitude. And if someone refuses to give you that respect, it doesn't make you less. It doesn't erase your worth. You are still whole. You are still deserving. And sometimes walking away with dignity is the greatest victory of all. Now I ask you, if you've ever been cast aside by someone you loved, how did you find your strength again? Or maybe you're still searching. If so, know this: you're not alone. Here, in this community, every story is a reminder. No one has to suffer in silence. Share your story in the comments. Tell us what you've been through. Because when we speak, when we share, we remind each other that dignity and justice belong to us all. And if this story touched you, if it echoed even a piece of your own life, leave a message for yourself below. Something you need to hear, something you deserve to believe. And don't forget, subscribe to Silent Tear Stories for more journeys like this. Stories of sacrifice, betrayal, and those unforgettable tables turned. Because sometimes hearing another's story is the first step in healing your own.